Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of TRCOA's Behind the Groove. If you're here live, please introduce yourself and ask questions in the chat as we go along. This episode is sponsored by Stinson Recording Studios. Also, if you find this content useful, please like this video, and if you are new, please subscribe to our channel. We make new content every week. Today, we are proud to have Matt Parmenter. He is going to discuss the importance of using proper phase alignment with multi-track drums. Matt is an Emmy-winning audio engineer and producer, and the owner of Ice Cream Factory Recording Studios. Matt will begin right after our pro tip in under 5 minutes.
Hey guys, Forrest Collada from the Recording Conservatory of Austin here. Today we're going to be looking at another pro tip in under 5 minutes. Today's tip is about a relatively new feature in Pro Tools called the folders feature. So previously, the only way to remove unwanted tracks without deleting them was to use the hide feature. And the way that worked was you would select the tracks you wanted to hide, you would right click, come down to this menu and hit hide, or hide and make inactive. And it would remove them from the mix window, and it would be stored up here in the corner under the tracks list. Now, with folders, you select all the tracks you want to put into a folder, right click, go down to Move To, and I'm going to select New Folder. It's going to pop up a little menu. I'm going to title the folder. I'm going to call it Guitars. And it's going to make this extra little track icon here with a little folder icon in the corner. I'm going to color this the same as the rest of my tracks, and I'm even going to group it in with the others. So I'm going to make a new group here. I'm going to call it Guitars. And now the folder and all the tracks are grouped in one group, and if I click the little folder icon, all the tracks collapse, and all I have to do to bring them back is click that one more time, and there they are. The folder will also respond to the same solo and mute commands as the group. So because this folder is grouped in with the tracks it contains in the guitars group, when I click solo, all of the tracks solo, and when I click mute, all of the tracks mute. This is a helpful way to just have a global control of a solo and mute of a bunch of different elements of the mix. Cool.
Making sure that all your wave files are aligned perfectly. I really like using the auto align from Sound Radix for this. It's a little bit spendy though, so there's a way to kind of get around that. Maybe a little slower, but it works. So the track you're hearing today is a song by Griffin Swank. He is a songwriter out of Houston. The drummer on this is Michael Peters. We recorded this just a couple of weeks ago, and the drums sound like this without anything on them. It's pretty solid right out of the gate, but when I put auto align on this, it started to really kick in. So first I'm going to just show you kind of how to set up auto align. I put it on all the tracks. You pick the track that's the farthest away. Now in this case, for me, I've got a whole. I'm an egregious over micer. I love to put as many mics as I can on things, and then just take away what I don't want to use. But so this is the program for me. So in this case, I've got a pair of mics behind the shoulders of the drummer. They're Coles 4038s, and it looks like they're pretty identical as far as distance goes. So I'm just going to choose the hi-hat side shoulder mic, and we'll take it from there. So I will put an instance of auto align on there. I'm going to set that to be the send 1, and then I'm going to put an instance of auto align on every other track, and I'm going to set those to be receives. As you can see, I've already done that. So basically, this is setting up its own little side chain just for the information coming out of the track that you're using as the send. So from here, it's kind of tedious. You hit say, detect on the overhead hats track and just let it run, and it will eventually figure out the polarity and the number of samples. In this case, it's only 11 samples away from, like the overheads are only 11 samples away from the shoulder mics. And the ride side one is a full 113 samples. Same deal. This unfortunately takes a long time. I'm gonna leave the rack and floor alone because I've already cleaned those up. And they won't really align well without having the full information there. Snare bottom goes. I'm cheating a little. I've already done all this, but should come up with the same number or very close to it. It's a little different. I used a different source mic the first time I ran this auto align. So basically this only aligns backwards, so you have to choose the furthest mic. So if it's a room mic that you're relying on, that's the one you should choose. And like I said, I'm an over micer. There are 4 mics on the snare. There are 3 mics on the kick. And 2 competing sets of overheads. So this is, could be a phase nightmare. Now we're up to sub kick. Because I'm using a further away mic from the sub kick, my samples changed. You can see up here the number of samples away from the overhead that each mic is. Some take a little longer than others. So now, without alignment, it's most noticeable in the snare. With the alignment, you hear the whole bottom end of the snare comes in and really clears and details up the whole kit and makes it sound a lot nicer. Now, in order to get these numbers of samples, you could do some math and use some measuring tapes while you're recording if you have that luxury, to figure out exactly what the distance is from one mic to the next, and choose your furthest mic and match it up that way. But thankfully we're in a time when we can look at these things on a screen and see. So say we don't have auto align and we want to just set up our delays kind of manually and then go back and figure out our phase after the fact. So I'm going to apply on this second insert channel a whole set of time adjusters. This is a built-in plugin that comes with Pro Tools. So it's just a short delay. So we're back at auto align is off. All the tracks are not in alignment. we're starting with, say, the shoulder mic over here. So I'm going to ungroup. I'm going to zoom in pretty tight and maybe make these a little bit bigger. There we go. Something of a medium size. And let's see, get back down here. All right, so if that's our exact point of where we're starting, let's drop a marker right there. And now we can go to every track and we can figure out exactly how much it needs to be delayed to line up. So up here, if we switch our time base to samples, we'll see that this is 222. And there's a couple of ways. We can nudge it by putting in 222 and then just hitting the plus key. That will put it, well, that didn't work the way I hoped. Never mind. Let's see. Let's use the actual time adjust plugin. We'll set that to 222 samples. And let's see. Let's do the same thing for a few of these. So the ones where it's going to be the most noticeable, it says 214 right up here in the length. The ones where it's going to be the most noticeable are probably in the snare. Let's get that. Ah. 172. Let's see how close we get to where we were. Some of these, now these will all line up phase-wise. The snares, the third snare track is not going to fly, but let's see, that's a little later. Kind of jumping around here, so bear with me. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll answer them as I go. I'm kind of cruising along here, but that's a 178. And then, see, I haven't adjusted this one. A 174. And these shouldn't be too far off of what the numbers are that AutoAlign came up with, but if they are, well, I'm not sure why that would be 178. So, also on this particular track, you can see that let's just use Avid plugins. This is easiest. You can see that the Snare BK5B, which is a little RCA ribbon mic, is inverted phase from the rest of them. Also, it looks like the snare bottom will be inverted. So clearly when I was tracking this, I wasn't super careful about phase. What's that, 182? And so I'll need to flip the phase on both of those. And that should be, if we do the overheads here, let's see. This will be a shorter number for that one. That's 38 samples. And then this one is even shorter. Whoops. Get that one more time. I'm not being super precise about this, but it does matter to be somewhat precise. So 16. So this isn't wildly different from what we had on Auto-Align, which, yeah, so Auto-Align said it was 11 samples. And even doing this quick and dirty without zooming in super tight, it says it's 16 here. So we're pretty much in the same neighborhood. So now, if we select all the drum tracks, yeah, you can hear the exact same difference in the quality of the snare particularly. So I've flipped phase on 2 channels on the snare, and then I've time aligned all of the tracks so that they're all together, and it's created this much thicker, much tighter sounding drum tone without having to do any EQ or compression or level adjustment at all. These are all at 0. The overheads are a little lower, but you can even turn the overheads up now. They don't add any mess to the mix. And that's pretty much it. The great thing is it works on all sorts of tracks. It works on bass. You've got a bass DI. You've got a bass amp, and there is a definite difference in time between the two, and it causes a phase issue. You can take the peak of the DI or the bottom of the DI and go to the 0 of the mic, and the difference is 54 samples. So if I drop that same delay in, time adjuster, 54 samples, and now here's the bass with nothing on it. Whoop, we're still on that. And here's the bass with a little time adjustment. Oh, see, I did this backwards. I used the first one instead of the closest one instead of the furthest one. So the furthest one is my source, and I go back to the beginning of the same wave on the DI with, without, and same thing with Auto-Align. I've already done that. So it's saying 76 samples. This says 54 samples. Again, I'm not being super precise about it, but oh, well, that shouldn't say that at all. Anyways. Minus 76. So it's aligning them a different way. That's something about it. It's Auto-Align I actually didn't know until just now. We're learning together. But either way, once you align those things, you get a really nice, like all the bottom end comes in. I got a couple of questions. Do you flip the polarity with some? Yes, if I see that it needs a polarity flip, I can do that. Auto Align does it automatically. It'll detect whether the polarity should be up or down. But you can generally see, like, these aren't going to need a polarity flip because this one's going to move back to the same point where, well, like, let's see if that was actually moved over so it's zeroed, it would need a polarity flip. So let's go ahead and flip. Get over here. There we go. Flip that second band and see if that makes a difference in the bass tone. Yep, a lot more bottom end comes in. I kind of like the mid-range tone, and you can use polarity as a way to shape the tone of a guitar or a bass. So in this case, I actually like it a little bit out of phase. I feel like it's more appropriate to the song, which is kind of a 60s kind of groovy sounding jam. An example on guitars. I actually don't have a multi-mic'd guitar track. I do have a multi-mic'd piano track, which might be really nice to hear because it's got a lot of mid-range. So this was a Coles 4038 on the high end of the piano and then a M49 on the low end of the piano. This is a 1908 Mason & Hamlin upright. And that's the M49. That's the 4038. Together, pretty thin. They're miking different parts of the piano, but you can see that the M49 is just a little bit ahead, and if I align it, it's going to cause that's probably going to end up putting these two out of phase. So let's get large with these. And let's see here. So I guess another way to do this would be to manually slide tracks around, but that can get really dangerous. They're not wildly different. Let me fall back on my auto align for a second here. I've got the 4038, which is the slightly later track, as the source, and then just 21 samples for the M49. But it's also, okay, the phase on both of these is the same. So let's see what happens. So when I put them out of phase, they're very out of phase right now, but time aligning these without. So there's this sharp top end attack that's kind of softened up when you align those. I don't always love it. Sometimes I'll align a track and I'll be like, sonically it's not doing it for me. It's, it looks right, it's all lined up right, but it just doesn't, it doesn't sonically add anything to the mix. I think the tone of the snare drum particularly came back really nicely in this example, so I'm definitely going to keep that in. The guitar, I took it easy on myself and just did one track of that, so nothing to align there. And then, yeah, the piano, I kind of enjoy it more in the mix. Being a little bit thinner and a little bit pointier, I feel like it shows it shows itself through the mix a little bit better without having to add any EQ or compression to make it stick out. So yeah, pretty much the idea is you're looking at a physical, if you're looking at a physical setup of microphones, they're all in different places. They're all capturing the same source instrument, and the distance between them is the thing we're trying to remedy by pulling them all into perfect alignment. So it sounds like you recorded the source instrument with one fantastic mic that got everything. One thing I don't do is I usually don't use the room mic as part of the selection. Now, I do have a room mic that I tracked with this that I ran through a pretty intense compressor. And the room mic is probably a 500 or so sample distance back, 330 samples from the rest of the kit. It's about 15 feet away, and it's adding something here. It's adding a lot of bottom end. It's causing some low frequency phase issues. If it's in the mix, but if I want the sound of the room to be part of the drums, right now I've got time adjust set on all the other ones, and then this one's set to -332. Which, one of the cool things about auto line is you can see the number of milliseconds that is, the number of centimeters, or the number of inches that is. So that's 93 inches back that's pulling it, or 332 samples. And it's not a huge difference. It's kind of noticeable, but yeah, and this is a case where like I could leave it in, or if I turn it off, I feel like I get a more it's maybe more noticeable when there's more cymbals going on. Let's redetect and see what it does. So normally, no, that's right. In order to do that, I need to turn on all the other auto lines. Let's see. So if I redetect, it's now going to be the two mics furthest from each other. It's actually adding 225 samples, so it's done a completely different thing. It's not wildly noticeable, to be honest. Yeah, the room mic is kind of a wild card because it's so far away from the source that it could be detecting like the second transient as it bounces off the back wall. This particular mic is facing away from the kit. It's a U47 facing away from the kit at the back wall. So it can cause some anomalies with the low frequencies when you flip it. Yeah, that's one that you kind of just have to blend it in how you want it to. You can get rid of some phase issues by just removing the bottom end of the mono room with EQ if you want to just kind of open it up and use it for more of a reverby kind of sound. And it completely depends on the room. Mine's kind of a darker, shorter room, so it's hard to get a sound that's like really distant and reverby. So John wants to know if I can play some of the track, and the answer is yes. So all together, with, I'm kind of digging the sound of the time adjusted track almost more than the auto aligned track. So I'm going to try this with the free time adjust. So yeah, that's the song. And as I was going through, I was turning on and off the auto align versus the time adjust. I didn't turn off the phase flip, but it wasn't flipped in auto align anyway, so one of them was. Yeah, so you got some examples of how things were going there. A lot of this could be simplified by not putting, 4 mics on the snare and 3 mics on the kick, but I I just got a new mic and I wanted to try it out. So I was like, yeah, let's throw another one on the snare. And I generally have a couple of mics always set up on the kick, and I throw on the sub kick sometimes just as a, just in case I want a little extra thump on the low end. Half the time it winds up getting turned off, whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole trick. You're just trying to get all these little squiggles to hang out together and sound good. And what it really comes down to is, if the mix is working for you and it's sounding great, then you're doing it right. And if you just can't seem to get the snare to pop out of the mix, chances are it's not your EQ, it's not your compression, it's a phase issue. There's some fighting between the overheads and the snare, some fighting between the snare top and snare bottom, some fighting between the room mics and one of the snare mics or something like that, and it's causing the whole thing to kind of get like all the body sucked out of it and all the detail. So yeah, if your snare sounds terrible, chances are there's a phase issue flying around in there somewhere. So yeah, I don't think there's really a lot more to it than that. It's just use an auto align. There's a few things with auto align detail wise. You want to kind of adjust your noise floor so that you're not triggering off of every single sound that's coming into the mic. You want the primary sound to be the transient from whatever the mic is on, snare, tom, kick, whatever. Same goes for the side chain, whatever the input mic is. You don't want it to be all of the volume of the input mic. You want to mostly get the peaks of the transients. So bring your noise floor up somewhere when you're setting it up. I always detect delay and polarity because you never know when it's going to find something that isn't immediately obvious from the initial transient, but like 2 or 3 milliseconds down the road, there might be a shift to the sound where the transient attack looks like it's in phase, but the actual body of the tone of, say, a rack tom or a floor tom is oscillating out of phase with the overheads and something like that. Like the attack will sound fine, but then it'll just die off really fast. And when it's in phase, that sound carries a lot better and can make what sounds like a really thin tom sound really full and beefy because the waveform is correctly in phase. I think my floor tom's just quiet. Anyway, yeah, that's about it. I don't think there's really a lot more to it than that. I think the places where you're going to find the most, I guess the one place that I wasn't really able to show today that you'll find a lot of really audible differences in like a distorted multi-mic'd guitar track where you've got 2 or 3 mics on a guitar cabinet, and once you perfectly align those, the guitar goes from sounding however it sounds to sounding much thicker and richer and more like you're just standing in front of the cabinet instead of hearing the guitar through some mics. It can dramatically alter the sound of your guitar in a way that's potentially really great. Sometimes you don't want that exact sound, but I think you'll find if you have perfectly aligned guitar tracks and you get suddenly a bunch of low end that you weren't expecting to have, it's easy enough to take that out and you'll find that the mid-range sounds a lot nicer. Like I said before, the tone of the track cuts through the mix when everything's aligned. Each instrument sits in its own place in the mix, and it's a lot easier to build a mix once everything's in time. So I'm not seeing any new questions, and I don't really know how much more I can ramble on about putting things in alignment. So I feel like I've pretty much shown a couple of different ways to do this, and yeah, that's about it. That's pretty much what I have. So thanks for watching, and yeah, enjoy. This is a song by, like I said before, this is a song by Griffin Swank called Continually Blue. He released a version of this with a different recording and a different mix earlier this year, and we're planning on doing a single re-release for this recording of it sometime pretty soon. So he's a fantastic artist. He's pushing a radio campaign for his first album right now, and second album, sorry. And yeah, it's great stuff. He played everything except the drums on this track and sang. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thanks everybody for watching. If you found this content useful, please like this video. It will tell YouTube to show it to others. If you are enrolled, please go to the Seminars tab on the my.trcoa website and take the quiz over tonight's lesson. And if you need to book one-on-one time with an instructor, text 512-231-0344. If you aren't enrolled, go to trcoa.edu to find out more information about what we do. Also, please post in the chat subjects you'd like to see for our upcoming live streams. And as always, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys on the flip side. Bye, everybody.